For this podcast, I wouldn't want to AI machine translate this. Voice and all the gestures and all that is one thing, and the lip sync, but the actual content is essential. Hey, this is Slater Pod. Hi there, Esther.
Hi, Florian.
Back from California.
Yeah, been back for a couple of weeks now. Less of the Californian sunshine, more of the London London pre-autumn.
Overcast. Now, that was an excellent conference, excellent location. A couple of weeks ago there in Menlo Park. A lot of people commented on the location. They appreciated it being in the middle of San Francisco and San Jose. So, that big highway 101, it was easier to reach. A lot of people said than if you have to go to downtown San Francisco. So we will probably come back to that location. It's also great, like that courtyard, sunshine. People could network outside, but of course then the event location inside was also fantastic with the exhibitor hall and the conference, the main conference room. So very, very pleased with that. Also the night before the main conference or the evening before, we had Spence Green from Lilt opening the welcome reception with a few words. Very interesting that he, was speaking about all of these AI luminaries or AI leaders, basically being, that he remembers them walking around the streets of, Stanford University and like Palo Alto with like hoodies and things like that. So like 10, 15 years ago.
Probably still do wear hoodies, but
maybe they still wear hoodies. So that was a nice anecdotal. On the day, of course, really cool having RWS there. Great booth, great team, and great presentation there by them. And then also, I loved the presentation by Silvio from eBay. That was very kind of a breath of fresh air. Like, what if you only had language AI? Like, could we just build all of the cool things that we have now from scratch without all the legacy? That was great. Helena from TED, really interesting about synthetic dubbing. And then Phrase and Uber, they had the great, very interesting panel with Anna, basically about, I loved when Uber said that, they're having the same budget, but they can do more localization now, a lot more than they used to. And then I did moderate that speech translation panel with Syricom, Interprefy, and Kudo. That was great. I will put all of the recordings eventually onto our subscriber library, of course. And also Accolade and SnapLogic and Microsoft, very, very interesting panel on all the technology. If you want to scale this in localization, enterprise grade, was a good discussion. So we will be coming back to California next year, very, very likely at the same location, because I find this one hard to beat. We've done a lot of these now, and that one was hard to beat.
Yeah, it was great.
Then Anna and Seema went up to Montreal. So they had a busy couple of weeks. I was exhausted after one. They added another one and went up to Montreal for ALC for 3 days. A road trip. The ALC Summit, where we presented the findings of the ALC report, the survey, right? The ALC Industry Survey 2024, which we produced. And we had a great booth. Go check it out on LinkedIn. We did a few posts. We had mugs, Esther. We had so many mugs.
Slater mugs, yeah. I know, Slater. I want one.
I want one. We have 100 of them in storage because they didn't arrive in time for SlaterCon.
Okay, I don't want 100. Just to be clear, I want one.
I would take 2 or 3. The booth looked like we were like selling mugs. We had so many mugs, 100 mugs. So if you come back, we were asking the delivery company if we can actually get the mugs put in storage, because now the delivery company has 100 Slater mugs. So we asked them, can you put them in storage and we can get them again in 2025? You can't throw away 100 Slater mugs. Like,
you don't want to ship them to Europe equally. 100 mugs in transit to London is.
I don't want to pay $1,000 to ship 100 mugs. So let's put them in storage. They're not gonna spoil or anything, right? And then we'll distribute them at the next conference. That was a key finding from that conference. No, another finding is that actually Anna told me that a lot of she felt that a lot of the participants there were actually quite advanced in the implementation of AI and kind of day to day. So that there's that was something that perhaps was expected, but you could also see that, well, everybody's busy with day to day. So, but no, they're not. They have been implementing this quite aggressively. Some of the key findings from the ALC survey. First, I mean, you can go and get the entire survey. I highly recommend it. Go to the ALC website, get that. I think it's like $100 if you're a member or something, and $150 if you're not. But, excellent 150-page thing. So just a couple of highlights. So basically, the company surveyed, I think it was over 120, 130, so more than last year. Many of them are in translation. Main service line for 60% of the companies was translation. Interpreting was the core for most of the rest. Then in terms of growth, more than 60% actually managed to eke out some growth in 2023. That was, of course, super challenging. One quarter of those that participated at flat, and then 1 in 5 actually reported declines. Tons more. So in M&A, there seems to be a heightened interest in acquisitions, also in selling the business. Then in terms of the staff, roughly 4 in 10 LSPs increased their workforce, 20% downsized. One interesting stat is that the LSPs that participated on average work with 902 independent contractors. So quite the big pool. Makes a lot of sense. Prior in my previous LSP life, I think we had like probably 1,000 day to day, maybe 3,000 kind of that we were regularly working with, but that was a pretty large LSP. For the US based companies, one interesting data point is that the W2 translator salaries remained steady in 2023, which of course means with inflation in real terms, they kind of declined. They declined. And now, almost 80% of all LSPs offer MTPE. That's up from 63% the prior year. And closing on a couple of data points, that MemoQ is the leading CAT tool for them. Those that responded, BoostLingo is the leading interpreting tech, and DeepL has now risen up the ranks to become the dominant MT provider. So, if anybody from these companies listen to it, feel free to clip it and put it on the interwebs. All right. Now, in the meantime, the research team is really prolific. So we also published the 24 Slated Pro Guide Translation AI, the follow-up. So now it's not 10 practical applications, but 20 practical
It's the second edition,
applications.
right? We had a Pro Guide on Translation AI last year, 2023.
Correct. Yeah. So this is the updated and expanded version. Go have a look. It's 20 use cases. You can't miss it. Uber said they've tested or implemented 12 of them already.
Yeah.
So if Uber does 12, you as the service provider need to do more. Go have a look. All right, that was the intro. And now let's get into the news.
The news.
SmartCat raises $43 million in a Series C. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, raising quite a chunk of money there in a Series C. I think takes the total funding amount to about 70 million now. But yeah, I mean, point being, it's kind of unblocking funding again beyond what is just pure AI and MT, so kind of expanding out into sort of language AI more broadly, and obviously sort of enterprise translation specifically as well. Potential implications for other AI companies out there, and yeah, I mean, SmartCat said that planning with the funds to expand their product innovation, both in AI translation and also multilingual content generation. Both of those areas, they'll also go ahead and support sales and marketing efforts globally. So doing a bit of a push there. And the lead investor was a company named Left Lane Capital.
Yeah, I'm seeing they have a lot of companies that they've invested in. And it seems like...
They do early stage?
They do early stage. It says, just their New York-based venture capital firm investing in high-growth consumer and internet tech companies. 2.6 billion in assets under management, so quite big for VC. Yeah, well, congrats to Ivan and the team. incredible to raise a Series C in this environment, and kind of a testament to investors' appetite coming back. So this should have positive implications for also, companies like SmartLink, Unbobble, Phrase, Lilt, maybe if they're going out for another round. So yeah, interesting that this would kind of unblock the funding pipe now for, companies beyond just core AI tech like DeepL. So yeah, again, congrats to Ivan and the team. So YouTube may finally launch AI dubbing broadly. We have been talking about this for 870 years. No, I checked, about 2 years since the first article about that allowed. You remember that allowed feature?
Yes,
allowed
I do.
tool, like this internal Google project where they basically wanted to add dubbing.
It was like an incubator product, I think, at the time, wasn't it? And then they took it out into featurized it.
Correct. And then we also spoke to Farbot from Unilingo about a year ago, when they're doing or used to do some of the Mr. Beast dubbing, the human dubbing. And obviously, if it becomes kind of automated and AI based and spread broadly, that will be a big deal. I think we really need to think about this, like, in terms of impact, as if Netflix had been like 80% English or something, and you would not have been able to select different languages, no subtitles,
and then one day switched
no
it
dubbing.
on.
And then one day you're just switching on, like, oh, now you can have it in 10, 15, 20 languages, right? And I think that's what YouTube is, again, teasing, but they're a bit more specific. So someone named Johanna Vulic, Chief Product Officer of YouTube, posted yesterday about this, various new features on YouTube, and among them are find a global audience with automatic dubbing. And let me just read this because it is kind of interesting. So it said, we've been testing our dubbing tool with a small group of creators, which lets you generate translated audio tracks for your videos in different languages. Again, like Netflix, different audio tracks, same video, different audio tracks, boost view count, right? Boost engagement. We're thrilled to bring this to hundreds of thousands more in the coming month. So small group of creators to hundreds of thousands more, which would have a big impact. And they're saying we're now piloting a new capability with a handful of creators, so we're now back to a handful, that will transfer your tone and intonation, the ambience of your surroundings, and infuse it into the dubbed audio, making the experience sound even more natural. So, like the mic sound, maybe if there's some background, maybe if there's some church bells that are ringing because mostly when we record at 11 a.m., there's like the church bells ringing. So this would all be transported into the new, across languages, right? So it's a little less artificial there. Very, very interesting. I think a huge deal. And they would also have to give creators some type of post-editing capability. I don't think you're going to go full AI. There needs to be some way of editing the AI output, the machine translation, because, for this podcast, I wouldn't want to AI machine translate this. Voice and all the gestures and all that is one thing, and the lip sync, but the actual content is essential. And this podcast would not be easy to translate into, for example, German, right? Even if that's native. All right. So yeah, YouTube, big deal. I think we're going to publish a piece by the time this podcast comes out. Probably some additional information in there. M&A corner. So we had the funding. Now let's go M&A. What happened there?
Yeah, we've got a couple of stories. I think our last podcast was probably about a month ago. So it's been a few happenings in the world of mergers and acquisitions since then. So we covered again news coming from Cloudbreak. On the one hand, the company is now rebranded to Equity, and at the same time acquired one of its competitors called Voice. So Cloudbreak, people may remember, it's healthcare interpreting provider. It also includes the video remote interpreting platform Marty. It was recently itself sold by its former parent company, UpHealth, sold to a private equity firm called GTCR. That particular deal was finalized in March this year. It had been announced towards the end of 2023. and private equity firm paid 180 million to do that deal. And then, half a year later, 6 months later or so, Cloudbreak then went and did its own acquisition merger with Voice for undisclosed amount. But Voice, a little bit about them, founded a decade ago. Seems to be quite sizable also. So sort of 10,000 medical interpreters within their network, used by a couple of 4,000 medical facilities, facilitating 1.5 million care sessions on a monthly basis, and doing something around 0.8 million interpreting minutes on a daily basis. So yeah, interesting sort of combination there of players. Another sort of tidbit of information we found out there was that the new CEO of the company Equity is Maureen Huber, who was formerly based with AMN Healthcare. That's the healthcare provider that also has AMN Language Solutions. And Maureen was the president of Workforce Technology Solutions back there. Now, obviously, come over to Equity to lead that, head up that venture. And if that wasn't enough news coming out of Equity, formerly Cloudbreak, they also announced that they have a new private equity partner. So not only GTCR, the original acquirer, but now Heritage Group has come on board, invested in Equity Health. Heritage Group being a US-based private equity firm based on focused exclusively on healthcare.
We've been following them through the entire cap table, and now we have Equity Health, owned by a couple of private equity firms, with the CEO coming from AMN. So hopefully we can just now start thinking about equity with two eyes, by the way, and not all the the kind of the other pieces that were in that puzzle.
Components, yeah, true.
Yeah. Let's go to Easy Translate. Denmark. They did a deal.
Yeah, a Denmark to Denmark deal. Easy Translate acquired World Translation. That's a translation and localization provider also based in Denmark. Easy Translate being more so language technology coupled with services. World Translation, founded nearly 20 years ago now. Boutique provider serving clients both in the Nordic region, also in the DACH region. Looking to, through the acquisition, expand their e-commerce and SaaS customer base. Easy Translate, so the buyer is backed by private equity, an investor called Pride Capital Partners, based out of Amsterdam and investing in software and IT. So I think that company invested $3.3 million US. That was back at the start of 2023. They told us that the plan is for World Translation to maintain its own brand, and that the founder CEO, Brent Jorgensen, and the management team are going to stay on in the combined organization. So yeah, best of luck to them.
Good. Now it's time to say goodbye to our friends at Keywords.
I know. Yeah, it's very, very sad.
Sad.
It's sad. Sad for
No
those
more
who like
news.
to unpack. No more news. Well, maybe some news, just slightly different slant. But yeah, I mean, okay. So the news here is that Keywords, as most people may well already be aware, the game localization and game services provider is delisting. So will no longer be kind of reporting in that very kind of public way on a regular basis in terms of its financial results and all sorts of activities that we see from those publicly listed company. The reason it's delisting is because it is also being acquired by private equity. That is set to close in October, so I think towards the end of October, having been announced originally back in May. That's like a $2+ billion deal. We then obviously went and unpacked some of the information that came out of their final earnings release before delisting. That was reporting on their first half. So Globalize, which is one of the divisions of Keywords, I think one of three, that's where you've got all of the localization, audio, subtitling and dubbing piece. they said Globalize did have good traction for its AI-led product solutions, but revenues did drop overall. And then talking generally about activity levels, they were saying the margins were impacted by lower activity levels in Globalize. Pricing continues to be a focus. They also said that localization and localization QA, it continues to experience a challenging trading condition. And then they said, however, they have seen a good performance within the media and entertainment businesses. And they said that was driven by some of the accessibility offerings, despite there being a slow ramp up in Hollywood, as we all know about. But they went on to say, actually, there was no impact from the interactive performance strikes in the first half. And that even if that goes on for the rest of the year, they're not expected to have any kind of material impact on the performance in the business.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It is interesting, yeah, to see what is to having an impact and what isn't. And then, yeah, outlook, they said generally looking good. They expect to grow in 2024, more activity volumes expected in the second half. And their sort of rationale for this is that they say the sector will start to emerge from slower content creation trends that are currently dampening industry spend. So obviously recognizing that that's been a factor there.
Create more content. Let's undampen industry spend. More content must be created. All right, goodbye keywords. Also goodbye, sad, Viva Translate. A company that really wasn't that much on our radar. I think they raised one round kind of during COVID. It's one of those speech-to-speech translation companies, mostly kind of focused on meetings, I think. And they shut down as of July 29th. So it's not super fresh, but came across this recently, saying that, they want to inform that we wound down the services on July 29th, 2028. Not an easy decision, but seems to be the correct one given the last few months, which probably were challenging. Sorry for inconvenience, etc. Been around for 3 years. They said they had 35,000 users, 2,000 organizations globally, and they're going to open source the tools. So
nice.
You can put yourself on a waiting list to get notified when Viva Translate is being open source. So that's a interesting or nice or kind way of actually ending a startup.
Yeah, it's a good parting gift if you've got something to sort of leave out there for the world.
Competitive market, live speech translation, very tricky. All right. On that note, goodbye keywords. Goodbye keywords. I mean, keywords is going to live on and prosper.
Being a bit melodramatic, yes.
They're going to live on and prosper, but just under new ownership, and it's going to be harder for us to find information. And yeah, goodbye to Viva Translate, and goodbye to all of the listeners and viewers. Catch you next week.